Speaking of the economy, Bessent was on NBC's Meet the Press.
Secretary Bessent, welcome to Meet the Press.
Kristen, good to see you.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being here in person. Let's start off by talking about the big picture on the economy. A majority of Americans say they disapprove of President Trump's handling of the economy. Consumer sentiment plunged this week.
Bernie wouldn't make these guys less racist. Don't kid yourself. You have a poor understanding of what motivates people's behavior and what motivates their thinking. People, especially you, they're like reeds in the sea. They move with the tide, okay? You give people strong narratives, they follow those narratives. You can take a look at voter swings in American history, by the way. Very racist people in America. And by the way, you go back to the 1970s, 1960s, everybody's racist. I mean, white people, of course. Obviously, black people. I'm sure some of them hated white people. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care that much if they did in the 1960s. Now, when they make fun of me for eating beans in the theater, it does make me upset. But I hold back my tears because I'm a grown man now. What was I saying? There are remarkable swings. I mean, you can look at LBJ or whatever, like for where people are motivated by these, like, look at the shift with FDR. Like FDR delivered on a real mandate from the people. This is the 1930s, okay? Everyone back then is racist. And FDR was racist too. But like the unifying force that he proposed overwhelmed other people's biases. Like if you ran versus FDR and your message was just like, oh, I think white people are better, I think it more than FDR, you would have lost. And they did lose. And that wasn't because the people voting weren't racist. It's because FDR's messaging strategy, his mandate was so powerful, it overwhelmed that. People are complicated. And sometimes also they're painfully simple. It's just a matter of strategizing. But also, yeah, if people are given a good message from Bernie Sanders, a good, compelling message that motivates them to vote for Bernie Sanders is very, very not racist. I think that would have made fewer people racist. I think that if you get a compelling, charismatic narrative delivered to you by a fascist like Trump, you are more likely to be made racist because the racist arguments are being peddled alongside other arguments that have convinced you. Whereas if Bernie Sanders is leading you down the lefty, Keynesian social democratic mandate, and he's also very anti-racist, it's easier to get pulled along with that. Don't accept that people are just the way they are. People change, and people can be made to change if you give them a good message. People can be made better or worse. But the overall problem of racism still persisted after FDR's tenure? Sure, but I never made any claims to the contrary. Also, people have gotten less racist over the past 100 years. Like we're not going to argue that these are like unchanging features of the human cognitive landscape, right?
Week to a 29-month low. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs slashed growth expectations. Why are all of those folks wrong and President Trump is right about his tariff policy?
FDR also put Japanese people in the camps. He's not exactly a bastion of racial equality. I don't understand what motivates people like you towards reflexive contrarianism. Not only did I acknowledge that FDR himself was racist, but this also in no way contradicts any one of my points. You're just saying it. We get it. You're woke. You know about one of the most famous things FDR did. Why are you framing it like it's a disagreement?
Well, Chris, and thanks for having me here. And look, what I am not going to say that went on for a long time under the Biden administration and for a lot of the media, and I'm not going to point fingers, but they used to say it was a vibe session and the American people don't know what they talk about. And Donald Trump, his administration, myself, all believe that the American people know what they're feeling, and that we believe that our policies will change that. Clearly, they are traumatized from what's happened with this affordability crisis that was brought on by the
Which is
previous
going so well
administration.
right now.
They want relief. We've been in for 8 weeks. We are putting the policies in place that will make the affordability crisis go down, inflation moderate, and that as we set the sails, I am confident that the American people will come our way, even if some of the media narrative doesn't.
Well, and just to be clear, I mean, these are polls that are taken 2 months into President Trump's presidency. But let's talk about what happened in the stock market this week. Worst week for the market in 2 years. Does that worry you, Mr. Secretary?
Not at all. I've been
Not at all.
in the investment business for 35 years, and I can tell you that corrections are healthy. They're normal.
Corrections? What a euphemism to pull out in a situation like that. Sorry, our economy is actually overvalued by 9%. So this isn't like a stock market crash. This is just a mediation towards the true value. Okay. Yeah, I see it. Phenomenal stuff, really. Remember, I know I've said this a lot, but not every viewer tunes into every video or stream. They are deliberately trying to create a recession. That's not a conspiracy theory. It is explicitly the goal. It's what they want, and they've said that they want it. And the reason they want it is because a recession opens up opportunities for the ultra-wealthy, not just your average millionaire, the ultra-wealthy, to consolidate power by buying up businesses and assets as they crash in value. This happened after 2008. It happened after the Great Depression, too.
What's not healthy is straight up that you get these euphoric markets. That's how you get a financial crisis. It would have been much healthier if someone had put the brakes on in 06, 07. We wouldn't have had the problems in 08. So I'm not worried about the markets. Over the long term, if we put good tax policy in place, deregulation, and energy.
Midas Touch featured you in a video saying the same thing. Really? Well, that's quite nice. Doesn't that mean we can just save what we have and buy all the failed stocks in like a year? Well, sure, but this is the problem with like the stagflation, like double whammy, which is that your currency is worth less too. I mean, how much excess currency do you have, right? Like maybe you're able to save up enough that you can buy the dip and you can buy it with like $10,000 of devalued currency, but everyone's struggling financially, right? It's very difficult to profit from an economic downturn unless you have insider information, or you're so wealthy that no matter what, no matter how bad the market gets, you always have assets you can rely on or liquid currency that you can use to buy, well, the dip effectively, For most people, the question is a matter of survival. Go to somebody in 2008 and be like, dude, the market crashed. That means that stock values are artificially deflated. You should buy into them now. And they'll look at you, they'll hit you with that I can't afford groceries this month stare, How do we best survive a recession or a depression? Rice and beans. I'm sorry, like genuinely, yeah, it's a good financial sense. Stock up, make friends, live with your friends, and then make big bowls of lentils to eat. Don't have credit card debt. Be very disciplined. I'm sorry, it sucks. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying, yeah, you're wasting your money on DoorDash. Another lentil segment, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. Just because it's tiring for you doesn't make it less true. It's really, really, really important. It actually is. I have a debit card only, Vosh. Am I fine? No, because now you're not building a credit score. We're not getting into that again.
Security, the markets will do great.
I hear you say you're not worried about the markets, but nearly 60% of Americans are invested in the markets. That's their retirement savings. What do you say to Americans who have real concerns that their retirement savings may be in jeopardy?
I'm 19. Do I need a credit card? Good Lord. Yes. Yes, you do. Get a credit card. Okay, you have a checking account and a credit card. You put everything you buy on the credit card, but only if you can pay it off. Only buy things you can pay off. You pay off the entire statement every time. You never, ever, 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 ever let the amount of money on, like you never let it tick over the monthly pay period. You pay it off every month. Pay it off twice a month. Who cares? You always pay it off, but you put it on the credit card because most credit cards will give you a small bonus for putting stuff on the card, like 1% or 2% cash back, depending on how much asset, depending on a variety of things. But never, ever buy anything that you can't afford to pay off literally same day, okay? Never maintain a debt. Also, don't buy DoorDash. Buy lentils and beans and learn how to cook. Seriously, learn how to cook. I'd be willing to bet that for a lot of you, something between 10 to 15% of your post-rent, post-tax income goes towards like unnecessary food-related spending, whether that be like restaurants, drinking, DoorDash, whatever else. Not counting groceries. Groceries are necessary, But also, don't buy the expensive groceries. You do not need to spend $5.69 on a 800-calorie frozen meal, okay? You have any idea how cost inefficient that is? You can get a big bag of lentils are tasty, by the way. You can get a big, if you season them properly, you can get a big bag of lentils for like like 10 pounds for like $6 or something. You have any idea how many calories that is? Chickpeas too. Just learn how to cook the basic meals. Get the spices. The spices are expensive, but they're worth it. Okay, I'm sorry.
I say that one week does not the market make. As Warren Buffett says, over the short term, the market is a voting machine. Over the long term, it's a weighing machine. And again, Kristen, it would have been very easy for us to come in, run these reckless policies that have been happening before. We've got these large government deficits, 6.7% of GDP. We've never seen this. When we're not in wartime, not in recession.
Not only did Trump balloon the debt, by the way, but he's already ramping up deficit spending.
We are bringing those down in a responsible way. We are going to have a transition. And
so we eat Indian food during a recession? It's not just Indian food, but sure, if you want to. You can get those little like curry cubes or whatever, if you know how to make those. It's not just Indian food. It's like there's tons of foods that use these. I mean it, okay? Listen, okay, you motherfuckers are lucky that I can't reach through the screen and look at you the way you look at me, okay? Because I bet I would dad the out of you people if I had the opportunity to. You goddamn disillusioned college students. I haven't taken a look at my bank statement in the past 2 months because I'm too anxious to look at the number, even though if I looked at the number, I'd probably be able to pay it off, or I could ask my parents for a little bit of money to help me pay it off so it wouldn't accrue interest, but I don't want to because it makes me anxious, so I let the problem get worse, I know you. Clean your goddamn room.
We are not going to have a crisis.
Let me play you what some business leaders all around the country have had to say in response to President Trump's tariffs. Take a look.
It would be difficult for U.S. farmers to try and get through some type of long-term trade war that affects our bottom line.
Building the average house is going to cost more.
I don't really understand the goal or the end play here on what's all trying to occur.
Mr. Secretary, you heard that business owner say he doesn't understand the end goal of these tariffs. So help bring some clarity if you can. Are these tariffs a temporary negotiating tactic, or are they a permanent policy here to stay?
Good. So, Chris, thanks for the question. And I can tell you, so April 2nd is going to be a big day. We're going to roll out the reciprocal tariffs.
Yep.
But what I can tell you, and I would encourage your viewers and the public and the media to follow, going into April 2nd, and already now we've seen some of our most imbalanced trading partners.
You sound like my boomer parents, Vosh. You should listen to your parents then, because they clearly have good advice that you're shirking because you're still upset about the fact that they made fun of you for skipping class in 11th grade to play magic cards in the bathroom with your friends or something, and then you got caught, okay? Like, your parents are correct on this. You can make really good food if you learn how to cook, by the way. To be clear. Like, you can make, it's really tasty. It's tastier than the frozen shit you eat. I promise you that. You can make good food. Probably better than the restaurant food you're getting, too. Unless you're spending a lot of money on it. Or it's a Mexican joint, because Mexican food is delicious. But you can make your own Mexican food. Did you know that?
Come forward and want to drop their tariffs. So by President Trump.
But cooking takes time. But that's the crazy thing. Once you know what you're doing, it kind of stops taking time. Go to a local thrift or secondhand store and get a rice cooker. Those things, the old ones, are indestructible. I guarantee you there are some there. Congratulations, you now can make several pounds of rice with literally no effort. And they stay there. It keeps it warm for days, 2 or 3 days or whatever, okay? Then you want to make some food? Okay, make like a lentil slurry, bean, whatever, okay? Make a curry sauce, something like that. You put that there, you put the rice there, kablamo. You have like a delicious meal that you would pay $11.99 for at a restaurant. It's so good. Once you learn how to meal prep, and by the way, meal prep gets a bad rep as being something that only bodybuilders do. Why? You can make with a crock pot like 15 pounds of chili for very, very little, and then just freeze it, and then literally you just microwave it, and then you have the same chili that tastes just as good as it did the first day you made it. Meal prep used to be the standard. Yeah, meal prep is what people did for thousands of years until very recently, when everyone was like, well, like for me, a meal is when my parents cook it, or like we go to a restaurant, or like when I'm lazy, I DoorDash it. So I conceptualize a meal as like a one and done thing where you assemble all the ingredients for a single item and then you make it, and it takes a lot of time, and then I eat it. And then I'm like, why did I bother with that? When in reality, it's actually like incorporating it into your life where you can easily, like effortlessly, one might say, assemble the ingredients ingredients to produce tens of thousands of calories of delicious food that stays around for weeks or even months, depending on what you've made and put in the freezer. Okay? Sorry, I'm done with this, okay? Learn how to cook. And by the way, if you really want to stick it to the boomers, stick it to them for only teaching women how to do this shit. And they don't even teach women how to do this shit anymore. Women only know how to eat hot chip and lie. Well, so do the boys, okay? No one's getting taught this shit, all right? This is like basic life stuff. It's like learning how to wipe your ass. It's literally the opposite of that. You learn how to shit, well, you better learn how to eat. That's how you shit.
Trump pushing forward with a tariff plan, reciprocal tariffs. If you drop yours, we'll drop ours. We are already seeing some of the worst offenders come down. April 2nd is an important day, but I would also tell everyone to look what happens from April 2nd to, say, June 30th as the other countries come down too. And President Trump's created a win-win situation here. Either the tariff barriers come down, the U.S. can export more, trade is fairer. It's always been free, but not fair. And then we, or if they don't do it, we'll take in substantial revenues.
I know that we haven't been paying as much attention to the video, but I do think it's important to point out that he was showing a bunch of videos of regular people who are struggling, and the question these people are asking is like, why? What's the point? What's the end goal? And he didn't give an answer to that question. He didn't answer it. He just explained what was happening. Because he can't say what the actual end goal is, which is a massive amount of asset accumulation for like 5 people.
I want to ask you about something that you actually said last week, and we'll discuss it on the other side. Take a look.
Access to cheap goods is not the asset.
Bosch is right, but he apparently doesn't have the social skills to not say it in the most obnoxious way. Okay, well, you say it in a way that, you know, compels the attention of 10,000 people. There's a difference between me not saying it in a way you don't like and me saying it in an obnoxious way. I think you think it's obnoxious because you're failing at life and you're projecting the feeling of insecurity that you get when this is called out by me onto me as like a moral failing on my part. Like, frankly, I think you're telling yourself right now, you need to listen to my message twice as hard as everyone else here. And if you find that irritating, it's probably because, you know, you've been putting it off for a while. Nobody gets irritated at stuff that I'm saying along these lines when they're currently eating a delicious home-cooked meal, right? Because then they're eating the meal and they're like, you know, that's right. You're like, damn, that's true. You, on the other hand, I'm just saying, I just want you to do better.
Is not the essence of the American dream. The American dream is rooted in the concept that any citizen can achieve prosperity, upward mobility, and economic security.
Mr. Secretary, are you there essentially saying that the Trump administration is comfortable to have consumers pay more for goods in America?
Not at all, Kristen. What I was saying is the American dream is not let them eat flat screens. That if American families aren't able to afford a home, don't believe that their children will do better than they are. The American dream is not contingent on cheap baubles from China.
He sounds like me, but from the opposite direction, which is incredible. It is kind of wild how the left got a reputation for being in favor of degrowth. Like, we need to roll back American opulence and wealth and abundance. But that is literally the position of this administration. Like, their position is explicitly, no, yeah, we should have fewer things. Also, very disingenuous of him to suggest that these tariffs are only affecting cheap baubles from China and not, you know, literally everything from food to housing to medical supplies.
That it is more than that, and we are focused on affordability, but it's mortgages, it's cars, it's real wage gains.
Do you acknowledge, though, that tariffs will ultimately drive up prices, at least in the short term? That's what economists, that's what business leaders, that's what CEOs say.
Well, they don't.
Like, this is what I mean, by the way, about like cuckolded American media, because if this was like a BBC interviewer, they would have been like, so how do you reckon with the fact that every economist says that all the things you've described as being priorities for the administration are going to get much more expensive through these tariffs? You know, like, not this like, well, how do you say, at least in the short term, how do you feel about the fact that like some people claim that there's like a chance that at least for a minute or two, like, you know, like it might get a little pricier. She probably just doesn't want to get disappeared.
That's what business leaders, that's what CEOs say.
Well, they don't have to, because I believe, especially with the China tariffs, that Chinese manufacturers, they will eat the price or eat the tariffs. I believe that the currency adjusts, and I believe if we look during President Trump's first term, that all the other things we do, if we're deregulating, if we're getting energy prices down, then if we look across the spectrum, Americans will realize lower prices.
They believe in nothing. No, they do. He's just lying. Like, he does have a belief, and it's that you should die and like 5 people should get wealthy. But of course he knows. He's aware. These tariffs are already ongoing. He's fully aware of the fact that prices are increasing. He can't just say that. Though you see little bits of it slip out when he says stuff like, he's confronted with the fact that he's making stuff more expensive for no reason. And his response is like, yeah, well, what do you want? Like a cheap TV? I don't care.
And better affordability.
As you know, the administration has been pressed repeatedly on the prospects of a recession. The messaging has been a little mixed. Let's look at some of what we've heard.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition.
There's going to be no recession in America.
Well, look, I think you never can predict the future.
Mr. Secretary, can you guarantee the American people here and now that there will be no recession on President Trump's watch?
Well, Chris, you know that there are no guarantees.
As it's just remarkable amounts of economic confidence going into this administration. This is not normal, to be clear, by the way. This isn't like normal hedge betting or any president, if asked, like, do you anticipate a recession, would say no. It's only because they want one that they're now doing this, because they are trying to produce one. And when it happens, they want to be able to pivot into the messaging of like, well, this is short-term economic harm, but it's also something we've predicted all along. And don't worry, on the other side of it, it will be glorious again, or something like that.
So, like, who would have predicted COVID, right? So I can...
The emergency epidemiological team, the task force that was set up and that Trump disbanded in his first term, that Obama reset up, that Trump disbanded again, I think. It was predicted. It was... A lot of people predicted it was their job. It was like the field, Obama.
Predict that we are putting in robust policies that will be durable, and could there be an adjustment? Because I tell you that this massive government spending that we'd had, that if that had kept going, we have to wean our country off of that. And on the other side, we are going to invigorate the private sector. I had a meeting with small bankers last week, and they are ready to start lending. Yeah. And I can tell you that Main Street is going to do well.
So what exactly do you mean when you say adjustment? Could that potentially lead to a recession?
There's no reason that it has to, but I can tell you that if we'd kept on this track, what I could guarantee is we would have had a financial crisis. Mm-hmm. I've studied it, I've taught it, and if we had kept up at these spending levels, everything was unsustainable. So we are resetting, and we are putting things on a sustainable path.
Let me ask you.
I never thought I'd hear a right-winger talk about sustainability. Again, all of these are just obfuscations. There's a reason why he's dancing around and not saying anything. We know exactly what they're trying to do. By the way, the reason why he's bragging about the small banks being willing to loan again, it's because that the inflation rate not going up signals the Fed isn't going to be increasing the interest rate, at least not yet. If the interest rate remains relatively low, people are more likely to, take loans out from banks. The real, like, shit hitting the fan moment isn't just going to be with the price hikes, the tariffs. It's going to be in everything that happens downstream of that. The price hikes from the tariffs will mean that people spend less. Consumer confidence will go down. It already has. Spending, will go down. We'll see what happens in the Q1 report, right? The overall, economic assessment of the first few months of the Trump presidency. We'll be getting that. Soon. And the effect that has on inflation and on the interest rates are going to massively guide bank behavior. And all of this factors into like greater economic instability. It's a very fragile system. Very, very fragile.
about some of these cuts to the federal government. Obviously, President Trump's been very clear.
How does an increase in prices cause a recession? Well, because it could lower the amount of consumer activity by quite a bit. And if it lowers to the point where GDP decreases, people are spending less overall because they can't afford shit, that would contribute. That would be a recession indicator.
He thinks that no agency should be spared. A lot of focus on the IRS. How much of the workforce do you think will be cut from the IRS?
Well, Kristen, I used to, when I was on the other side of the wall, I didn't like the term fake news. Now that I'm on the inside, I got to say it might not be strong enough because some of the numbers that I've seen thrown out.
I didn't give you a number. I'm letting you tell me.
No.
You tell me.
But some very large print media has thrown out big numbers that just doesn't exist. So
what is the number? That's what I want to ask you.
Well, I will tell you that there were about 15,000 probationary employees that we could have let go. We kept about 7,500, 8,500 because we viewed them as essential to the mission. And, we will know once we get inside. But what I can tell you is that we are doing a big review. We're not doing anything. Right now is playoff season for us. April 15th is game day. And even employees who could take voluntary retirement, the rest of the federal workforce, their date was in February. Our date for them is in May. So I have three priorities for the IRS: collections, privacy, and customer service. And we'll see what level is needed.
Do we have to pay taxes this year?
Okay, well, we'll stay on top of that review
I don't
for
think we
sure.
should
I
have
do
to.
want to ask you about the breaking news overnight. The Trump administration launching large-scale military strikes against Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthis. What exactly
I don't know
is
what the
the
Treasury
message that
Secretary is
President
supposed
Trump
to...
is trying to send to Iran?
So it's a very strong message and very different than the previous administration. So the Houthis, the Iranians, should expect that this is the beginning. This is not a one-off. And we are doing this because they are blocking freedom of passage for global shipping. And Chris, back to the economy, back to inflation, that closing the Suez Canal slows global commerce and increases inflationary pressure for both us and our allies. So we are sending a message. This is unacceptable. 2 weeks ago, the president announced a maximum pressure strategy on Iran. Their economy is in disarray.
Just remember that I don't give a shit what the Treasury Secretary has to say about foreign affairs, especially not in response to breaking news. Canadian Prime Minister posting about his meeting with the EU president on day 3? Why is he even saying that? Well, it's a news, it's a news organization. They're just trying to keep viewership high. I understand. I relate to that. Yeah, I don't know, folks. Tighten your belts is what I'm saying, basically. I know. It's not like I'm not ideologically pro-austerity. I would like to live in a world where there was enough, economic, or I guess enough social abundance that we could get personal taxis for all of our burritos. But unfortunately, that is just not the world that we live in. Europeans boycott U.S. products to protest against Trump tariffs. Well, that's nice. Don't know how effective boycotts normally are, but my main issue with boycotts, I guess, is the fact that usually the people conducting them are a bunch of completely alienated online lefties who only follow Instagram trends. You know what I mean? They see the posts about it and they're like, oh, I'll do it too or something. There's not really much mobilization. That being said, the hatred of the United States that's manifesting right now in Canada and many parts of Western Europe goes beyond just perma online lefty virtue signaling and extends into normie territory. And that's a lot more powerful. It's the same reason why Bud Light was boycotted into oblivion after they did that ad with Dylan Mulvaney, because the Republicans promoted that into the normie space. Yeah, Dylan Mulvaney. Will it actually happen, though? How to replace popular U.S. brands such as McDonald's, WhatsApp, and Levi's? You want your vintage Levi's anyway, okay? They're just not as good anymore. You want vintage Levi's. One's made in America. Making that shit in a goddamn projectile loom now. But Bud Light sales did not really slump. I've got bad news for you, my friend. Bud Light still hasn't recovered from the crater that it was dipped into. The Herman Schultz, or whatever the name of the parent company, might be doing fine, but that specific brand, actual instance of go woke, go broke. Yeah, no kidding. We'll see if this has any effect. Usually, though...
Faced with the specter of an international trade war, the American economy is trembling Tariffs, additional taxes, and contradictory announcements by Donald Trump has created instability for American businesses. In the state of Indiana, this company sells robotic components mainly made of aluminium, which is imported from Canada. With a 25% additional tariff, the components are likely to cost a lot more, and the owner does not yet know if he will be able to keep all of his staff.
Like right now we have 46 full-time people, about 10 part-time people. With higher costs might drive sales down, and that may make us not be able to hire more people in the future.
For others, like these wine sellers who set their business up in Washington just under a year ago, the survival of their business is at stake.
This is around $50 with 200% tariffs. I mean, we could do the math.
Also wearing a suit jacket with a V-neck. I'm sorry, but this is... God had it out for you.
Over $100 a bottle.
If he actually believes in the American dream, then he should understand that he's killing it. And he's doing it with an obsession over tariffs.
An opinion also shared by consumers whose confidence index has dropped by 10% in only a month.
I anticipate.
Remember that poll from the other day where it was like, all these Trump supporters are regretting their vote, but then when asked if they would have voted for Kamala, they were like, no. Only 1 of 10 who are regretting their vote was like, yeah, I would have swapped my vote.
We're going to have a recession, and it's going to be very difficult.
The uncertainty and the mood definitely...
What do you think the markets are going to look like tomorrow morning?
Concerns me.
The consequences can also be seen on financial markets, which strongly fluctuate with each of Trump's announcements.
Since Donald Trump has taken office, markets are increasingly sensitive and market volatility has increased.
Dan Arrow said this, they just need to be sent to re-education camps. Re-education camps are a meme, but like, how about step 1 is like, the Democrats don't suck total shit, you know? Like, literally, Bernie would have fixed this. It's just the no message whatsoever. No, like, again, and liberals will try to convince you otherwise. They'll be like, no, not Hillary Clinton, sorry. Well, they did say that about her too. Kamala Harris had a really compelling message that was actually like really like beneficial. And if people were just smart enough to understand what these numbers mean, and it's like, I'm sorry, listen, okay? As a person who voted for Kamala Harris, and as a person who agrees on every level that what she was offering was better than what Trump has been delivering, there is no question in the difference between, like, you have to be in such a bubble to not see how Kamala Harris's messaging was obliterated by Trump's like across the board media coordinated blitz of MAGA messaging. There's no comparison. Absolutely none. Versus, yeah, Kamala Harris saying she wouldn't change anything from Biden in a time where people are dissatisfied with Biden. It's just incredible.
In the last few days, markets are in freefall due to Trump's repeated tariff announcements and possible recession.
Donald Trump could impose new tariffs in the next few weeks. According to him, they are the only way to boost the economy and to bring back production onto American soil.
Yep.